welcome to Q2. This topic is one that we are very passionate about, I would say, Christy, right? And of course, Liz, you too, because you do that for a living. This is a topic that comes up a lot in client sessions and conversation about whether or not going after certification is worth it. And what happens once you get it? There are a lot of certifications out there. We talk about WBE, WOSB, which is through WeBank. There are some local ones too that you can research in your areas. There is NMSDC for minority owned. There is NGLCC for your gay and lesbian owned businesses. And last but not least, there is B Corp. And Liz Whitehead, who we've known for a couple of years now, and we've had the pleasure of meeting through WeBank, through an intro from Maya, I believe, expert in certification. So Liz, the floor is yours, and we'll let you answer questions or whatever the crowd wants.
Awesome. Yes, I would love if anyone has any questions, like just go ahead and ask them in the chat, and we can just hit the ground running with all your questions. But I did want to give just a little background. First of all, my background, like why do I care about this? I started working for a WeBank regional affiliate back in 2002. So I've been in this space for almost 25 years. And what I've seen is that people get excited. I was just talking to someone before this who just got certified. She was like, I'm really excited. I don't know what to do with it though. Like I don't know what I'm doing. And I would see that a lot. And when I started, I would just be like, great. I was essentially the executive director of the regional organization. I'd be like, let's have coffee. Let's talk about it. But as the organization grew, I couldn't do that with 1,000 people, right? And give them any meaningful advice. So I realized was that some percentage of people are just gonna get it, hit the ground running, get involved, and go. And that's probably like, and this is for any of the certifications. I'm most familiar with the women-owned certification. I mean, that's where I worked, but all of the certifications have a similar network and a lot of the similar buyers on the other side of the table. So some people can just get it and hit the ground running. Other people, like I think most people go to a couple things. They might have one client that asks them for it, so they keep it up. And then like probably a good 30-40% of people never do anything with it. They get certified and they don't do anything with it. And so what I wanted my role to be was to be like, one, talking to people about certifications like I'm talking to you. Like, should I get certified? Because I'm not an evangelist. I think if it's not going to work for you, you shouldn't waste your time and energy on it. But then once I do get certified, what does my company have to do? What your company will have to do, what a CPA has to do is different than what a marketing person has to do. And so I wanted to be a resource for companies. So yeah, maybe you can figure it out on your own in 4, 5, 6 years, but maybe I can shorten that time frame, and so you can hit the ground running with certification. So that's what I do. I'm a business development consultant. I develop plans for people to leverage their different certifications. I got B Corp certified in 2023. And what I quickly realized was that the B Corp network operates a lot differently than your WeBank for WBEs, your NGLCC, your NMSDC, in that their sole focus is not connecting you with the larger companies in the network. It's really, it's more about helping you continue to deliver your impact. That said, I find that, so it's like there's two things, and actually we talked about this, Aggie and Maya and Christy at the WeBank conference, which was like, it was very much focused on, those organizations are very much focused on small business owner or supplier, rather, WBE and WOSB, to large corporation. Whereas B Corp is really about building a community wherever you are, whether it's through an affinity group or through your geography. They're really about that community and your educating you about your impact. So, one thing I've noticed though is that, and you might have noticed too, it is an interesting time to be in organizations that are designated by in the States to be designated by your race, gender, sexual preference. You know, that like what do these programs look like now? What I would say on that is that there's like a collective holding of breath last year as corporations tried to figure out how to mitigate their risk, but also respond to the administration in terms of getting rid of all contracts that said the word diversity or equity or inclusion, women. If it said women, it was out. Um, how are the companies managing that? In many cases, like I said, last year, they were collectively holding their breath, kind of waiting to see what everyone else did. A couple of people came out strong on either side, like, no, we're not getting rid of these programs. A couple of companies said, we are going to get rid of the programs. And even some of them actually just kind of kept them under a different name. Um, I think a really good example is Target, which said, really went back and forth several times about what they were going to do with these programs. And in the end, ended up changing the name and still having their program. So and Target's program was previous to this a lot stronger than a lot of other corporations that were doing it. So their program is still pretty strong because they have a strong person in that role. They have a strong team, but you're not going to hear a lot about it externally. So, so I think that's another important thing to note, which is that these programs, especially on the corporate side, and we can talk about the federal side too. We can talk about government contracting and a little bit about local, though I suspect people are from all over the place. The corporations, the Fortune 500 corporations who accept the WBE certification, the MBE certification, the NGLCC certification, those are the ones that previously they had goals for doing this. They want to do business with women because of their purchasing power, because there's a brand bump that comes with actually being intentional about your suppliers. And then also it was good, very good, frankly, like community building, part of their corporate social responsibility. So that's why they were doing it. None of those reasons actually changed. It's not like those reasons changed to make them change what they're doing. What changed was the political environment. So they had to figure out, all right, we've done all this for a reason in the past. Not all of the corporations want to change it. Not all the shareholders want to change it, but we have to respond to this external threat. So that's kind of where we are now. I do feel like this year, those companies are kind of the ones that were holding their breath are starting to slowly exhale. Things are starting to release a little bit. They're going back to their programs. In some cases, the supplier diversity person's role has actually expanded because it's like, well, we're not going to discriminate, we're not going to say anything based on race or gender, sexual orientation, or, any of that. So now you're in charge of all the suppliers. One way to, prevent that. So that's kind of the state of the union, if you will, in terms of certification. I suspect that a lot of people are like, why should I do this? But I would love to hear, is anybody certified? Like, do you have any state, local government certifications? And what were you expecting when you pursued those? If anyone wants to weigh in.
I know a few of the people on this call are WBE, WOSB certified.
Okay.
We'll start. Athena Advisory is as of last year. We are WBE, WOSB, and we have been thinking about others, and that's why we organized this, because selfishly we wanted to find out if they were worth it, or how they complement themselves, right? Because as you said, NGLCC and NMSDC and WBE are all kind of catering or caring about the same businesses. It's very supplier driven and small business and how to link them up together. Uh, B Corp is the one that is super interesting on many
Mhm.
levels as well because of that community aspect, but also because it sends a message out to people externally that we care about more things than just business.
Yep. It's definitely a way to align values. And I think that's why the B Corp community, and then their sort of mini communities within that is so strong because I just, right, we all have people contact us on LinkedIn all the time, right? Like, oh, let's meet, let's talk. When somebody comes from B Corp, I'm like, okay, let's schedule something. Like, what do you want to talk about? It just, I feel like I know their values are aligned, that at the very least, even if there's nothing there for the two of us, we're both coming to the conversation genuinely and authentically, not trying to just sell the other person. So um, I think that's interesting. I think especially as a company, like Athena Advisory that works with other businesses, that's it's a great use case. I think if people come to Patagonia being like, oh, I'm going to work, or Patagonia to B Corp thinking I'm going to work with Patagonia or Danone, like maybe, but that it's not how the organization is oriented. They're not going to make it easy for you. I'll say that. Um, it's not. So let's talk about WBE and WOSB for a second. Because that's one of the first ones I always recommend that people get, because you can get this 2 for 1. So WBE, the corporations I talked about, the Fortune 500 companies, they all, the ones we can think about Fortune 500 companies, most of them have had, if they don't have it now, they have had in the past some sort of supplier inclusion or development program. So they accept WeBank certification. Why? Because it's national, right? So your Pfizer doesn't need like, oh, okay, you've got the California state certification in California, and then I'm working with someone in New York and they have this, so I have to accept all these state certifications. Basically, it's one national certification that says this company is 51% women owned, operated and controlled. And so multinational companies can be like, okay, this business in the US, it's WeBank certified, great. WOSB is the federal government certification for women-owned small business. You can get both of those certifications through one WeBank process. They'll just essentially throw in the WOSB for you. And there are set-asides on the federal program for women-owned small business. Those set-asides are still in place. So you can compete for government work, just with other women-owned small businesses. These are that program, just a little difference. That program is just for US citizens. The WeBank, you can be a green card holder or a permanent resident. So that's a difference. But if you have both, you can get both certifications. Uh, in terms of like other ones, so then you might be like, okay, well, what about MBE if I qualify? What about NGLCC? I think there's a or disability in, which I haven't mentioned yet for people with disabilities. Why would I get these certifications? And there's a couple of reasons I think to pursue at least more than one. One is that, like I mentioned, so the corporations that support these organizations are pretty much the same nationally. Like if you think of your multinational Fortune 500s, you know what I mean? They support NGLCC, they support NMSCC, and they recognize those certifications. Sometimes they're like, we're good on women-owned businesses, but we have not met our goal for LGBT businesses. So if you're both, they'll count the one that they need. So that's one of like a very, you know, basic reason. I think a more compelling reason is that, and that's typically what they'll tell you. They're like, oh, if you can meet all, these other needs, then, that works for our spend category. I think as a business owner, one of the reasons to do more than one is that the conferences are all kind of jammed up into 6 months of the year, the national conferences, if you will. So WeBank is June, Disability is July, NMSDC is like October, November timeframe, NGLCC is in August. So you have more opportunities in that relatively short time frame. Like I can't make WeBank this year, but I can go to Disability in. Can't go to Disability in, but I can go to NGLCC. You have those opportunities to, you have multiple touch points with these different organizations. Depending on who your clients are, like for example, and then within that, so the companies, but then within that, the people within the companies have different projects and particular roles within the organization. So somebody might be like, yeah, we recognize WeBank certification, but I really participate with NGLCC, the National Gay and Lesbian Chamber, because that's what I care about. So, depending on which organization you're trying to work with and who the person is, um, you might want to consider something like, oh, you're on the board of this regional organization. Let me show up to the things that you care about. Um, and I will say that you can attend any of the other ones. Like for example, I go to NMSDC. I don't have an NMSDC certification, but I do go to that event because it gives me those multiple touch points with different people. It's also an opportunity to show, again, sort of that values alignment. Um, you might see a very different side of somebody at the NGLCC conference than you do at a WBE conference. Again, because that's what they care about. Like that's where their priority is. And when you can show, I'm not a member of this community, I had to pay a little more to come because I'm not certified by them. But it's part of my values. My values are aligned. I am, allied with these other organizations. And I think that's true of any combination you can put together. So that's what I would say the value is. One, the touch points, and two, just kind of the values alignment with what your clients care about. Thank you, Aggie, for putting all of that in the chat too, where it talks about the different organizations. Um, and then there's a huge difference between just corporate contracting and federal government contracting as well. So in terms of how it works, what procurement looks like, federal government is very open and transparent. They put out RFPs typically publicly. You usually it helps to be on a schedule, which means you've given the federal government, it's kind of like fixed pricing. You're like, all right, for this is what my pricing is. And once you're on that schedule, you have access to different RFPs and they come out. On the corporate side, that's not how it works. It's really, and all business is relationship driven. We know that. But on the corporate side, their RFPs are not public. Many of them are not public. You build a relationship with them. You might get an RFP. Depending on the size of the contract, you might not have to go to RFP. But it's really more of like, all right, what's my relationship? What's my value to this other company? So that's the different certifications. I would say, is anybody now like doing business with like a major multinational corporation or wants to or has opportunities with them?
Liz, I'll ask a different
Oh,
question
sure. Yeah.
directed to you is like, who what are suppliers looking for? Like, for example, I know that in this room we have people who do accounting, we have people who do
Okay.
marketing or web design, we have people who do HR, we have looking through the list, mental health. Then you have us who do advisory and exit planning. Like, who benefits the most from working with those suppliers? Because I think one of the things that we're missing is that you're looking at your small business and the majority of your clients are other small businesses. I think that's what you were inferring to when you, Christy, and I, and even Rael, who was at the last WeBank conference, when we chatted together, we saw an opportunity on the WB and the WSB to get connected to other small businesses. And that's totally valid because you get to mingle with 1,500 women-owned businesses at the conference. There's just no platform for all of us to get together intentionally, aside from under the RPO umbrella. RPO stands for a regional president or organization, right?
Regional partner organization.
Partner organization, sorry. Apparently I'm in the president's world.
Yep.
But anyway, it's hard for, I think, all of us to fathom of how we would benefit a big supplier that with what it is that we do on a regular basis.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And so I mean, one, again, they have goals, right? So they're like, we're looking for people to do that. And the the people that are great supplier inclusion folks are the ones that are like, I know what we're buying and I know where the opportunities are. Are the people like that you meet at these conferences going to be the ones buying? No. Are they the decision makers? No. They're the person, they have some sort of influence within their company whereby you can get on the list to compete with these other suppliers that they're looking for. But so I think that's in terms of what you can do to value the company is that what are they, it's kind of like what are they looking for and how do you fit in? Staffing companies tend to have a really tough time in this industry because they've all gone to MSPs. They've all gone to like the large companies and those contracts don't get like subcontracted. But if you're someone who can like, I can work with a large agency and provide this area of expertise, or I can work with your internal HR team and provide and work on these specific projects. One of the things I always coach my clients on is like the whole like when do they call you question. For example, I had a client that did marketing and branding and in the financial services industry. And I was like, that's great. There's a lot of people doing marketing and branding, but when do they call you? She's like, oh, we really shine when they have acquired another company and they need to redo their brand strategy, or when they're hosting an external project and we can brand that event for them. So I was like, great. You really have to connect the dots for them because otherwise they're like, okay, marketing company, there's a million marketing companies. But if you have that narrow area of expertise, or even if you can just sell that, it's like, this is one of our core capabilities, then the larger companies might be like, oh, yeah, like they all have internal marketing programs at the same time. They all hire external marketing companies to handle different projects that require different expertise. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Hypothetical.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's a case study that you've seen out there, but like I'm looking at my screen. I'll use Becky, for example. She's front and center. And
Okay.
Becky owns an accounting and bookkeeping firm. And are there ever case studies to where either she could go after a government or a state contract with her um, uh, knowledge and expertise and what she provides? Because I know she does work with nonprofits. I know she does work with small and medium-sized businesses. Um, or are there ways to where, and I'm looking at Melissa, who is on the right side of Becky, who is a
Mm-hmm.
fractional controller, where they both being certified can partner to go and provide larger projects for those suppliers? And how does that work?
Yes, absolutely. So I've seen a lot of those kind of use cases with it's usually in local government contracts. So state or city contracts. Where so in Texas and California, I've seen this where there's like, okay, we're looking for a financial audit, or we're looking for someone to come in and evaluate the finances of our strategic plan, like do the financial part. And um, so right, like Becky, you might not say, "Oh yeah, I'm a strategic planner. Like let me go in and facilitate your board and do that strategic plan." But if you worked with a consulting company and you brought in that financial expertise, you could be part of that team. So I've seen that happen. I've also seen it actually on the marketing side where a large consulting company was like, we are going to work with a university on their 5-year plan, right? Like what they're going to do. And they brought in a marketing firm. It's like what to do the internal communications, not just like, oh, we're going to market to new potential students, but we actually have to craft the whole internal communications about what's new about our university, how we're reorganizing. And so they brought a marketing person in as well. So that's that's where I've seen it primarily work. On the corporate side, it definitely can. It usually looks more like a prime contractor to subcontractor relationship. And I would say on the federal side as well, where it's like, okay, there's a large, huge company doing this and you're doing a little piece, as opposed to this where it's like, we're going to bid on it together.
Yeah, there's something that you said right now. See, Maya. There's something that you said right now that is super important is that it's not just the federal suppliers that by having that certification, it also gives you clout with your local states and municipalities. And that's something that is often forgotten. I know that in Colorado specifically, there is an office that the state has. I have the guy's card here. Christy and I actually got to meet him during one of the WeBank RPO events. WeBank specifically is divided into a bunch of regional partner organizations. Now that I'm not saying president, WPO, RPO, whatever is happening.
Yep.
And the state has an office called the Statewide Equity Office. So anybody who is actually certified in the state of Colorado can contact. The guy's name is David Musgrave. Happy to put his email in the chat. Go flood him, because as a certified business in Colorado, you can basically have someone who not only is your cheerleader, but is helping you navigate municipal and state opportunities in the state of Colorado and connecting you to the right players so that you can offer your services to those players, because they are extremely well connected in big business in Colorado, medium-sized business in Colorado, and their entire role is connecting. So I appreciate you talking about state opportunities, because that's something that certified people often forget. They go after the suppliers. That's not the only perk of having that WBE, WSB certification.
Yep. And it might require, like, for example, in DC, it might require another certification, right? Like, uh, to do business with the University of Maryland, they might accept WeBank, but they prefer the Maryland certification, Maryland state certification. In DC, you have, a lot of opportunities come through that, but they actually have preferential pricing for for certified companies. So for example, if I submit a bid that's for $10,000, they'll actually take 2 to 5 they'll pretend like it's 2 to 5% less depending on my certification. So you can actually be more price competitive as well as just value competitive with these other companies. So it's obviously it's different state to state. So you want to look into what your state is. California has their own, and also start with what your clients are asking for. I mean, if your clients aren't asking for it, then, maybe you don't have the time and energy to do it. At the same time, I'd say if your clients are there in those rooms, right? Small to medium sized business that are looking to grow and scale, if that's your client base, then they are going to be in the local and national rooms that you might want to be in.
Questions, comments, people, ladies?
I'm curious, what the networking events are like. Uh, Is it worth attending them? I feel like I get 2 WeBank emails a day with events happening, and it's overwhelming. I'm like, I wouldn't even know where to start.
Oh, this is a great question. Yes, there are a million events. Where are you located, Becky?
Northern Colorado.
Okay, you're in Colorado, so it's Webeck
Way
West.
back
Yeah.
west, yeah.
Webeck
Mhm.
West. Okay, because you're getting emails from Webeck West as well as WeBank National. And WeBank National's national conference is in June right now, so they're like sending a ton of stuff out. Not only that, WeBank National has a lot of programs. We grow, we thrive, I forget, innovate. You know, they have a lot of educational, they're kind of like master's programs, if you will, like an accelerated master's program for business owners. They have a lot of those. So, what I would say where I would start is with a regional event, a Webeck West event that is happening near you. And then you can kind of get your feet wet. You can be a bigger fish in a smaller pond and start to meet the other women business owners that are near you. Now, is there something happening? There's probably something happening in Northern Colorado maybe once a year. So, oh, you're muted now.
My husband came in. I'm like, I'm busy.
Oh, okay. I thought you were like responding to what I was saying. Uh,
No.
so, yeah, so there might be something like once a year, but there's also a lot of virtual events now too. And so you don't have to just stick with Webeck West. One of the organizations that I think does a great job is actually Webeck East, which covers Pennsylvania, Delaware, and New Jersey. They have a lot of virtual events that are like do business with Accenture, like do business with, and so it's not, it's an opportunity to kind of get to know what the corporations are talking about, start to get a feel for how these conversations go, and then see who else is in the room, even if it's a Zoom room, to see if there are people that would be worth it to hang out. So I do think they're worth it. What I wouldn't do is, plan to go to the national conference and exhibit and sponsor and blow it all out all at once. Um, or even sponsor a Webeck West event unless there's like a very clear value add for you. I was just talking to like a promotional products company and was like, well, it's kind of an easy lift for you to do promotional products for the event, right? Like that's a great way to showcase what you do and get it in front of everybody. That's a sponsorship that would make sense. Whereas getting an exhibit table at the conference, you're just going to be stuck there and then not have an opportunity to walk around and actually see who the people are. So I would definitely take it slow. And for you, are your clients are mostly small and medium sized businesses,
Yes.
bookkeeper and CP. So
Hmm.
I would say, yeah, like the local ones where you're gonna start to get a sense for, all right, who are the business owners here who really care about that, who I'm values aligned with, and then what are the ones that they go to? Some people only ever go to like the signature events in their region and do pretty well there, especially if you're only looking for other, if your primary target market is other business owners.
Okay.
Liz, I will plug and answer Becky's question in terms of Colorado events. I will
Right.
selfishly plug because Athena Advisory Collective will be hosting an event on May 13th in partnership with InBank because one of our friends and partners is now on the board at Webeck West, and so we get the ins. when they
Great.
when they need people. So if you are to attend an event at the beautiful InBank building on May 13th, it's going to be, I think, at 4 p.m. We're sponsoring the drinks and food, and we're also like part of the. It's going to be about finance from. You would be great to be there too. Clean books to funding and good banking for funding, or good books for funding with your bank and up to financials for exit. So we're going to be inviting the crap out of the Colorado Weebies to that event.
Yeah, a perfect example. Like it makes so much sense to go there. There's other things which might be less like, okay, the collegiate accelerator mixer, probably not for me. Unless mentorship is on your list of strategic goals, but it's like, okay, I probably don't need to go to that. Yeah, but that's really where the value is in showing up. Showing up, meeting people, and then once you sort of know what to do, getting involved. Either it could be sponsorship, but it can also be like a lot of them have like accelerator programs for other business owners. Capital One, which is in my area, has a program called Sage where you get hooked up with a mentor from Capital One. Again, it's like this executive education program. But one of the women who's involved in it is a WBE that is an accountant. And so she is like their financial SME for this program through Capital One. So she gets a lot of visibility, she gets a lot of clients through there. So there is an opportunity with the larger companies if you can kind of craft out what are their priorities with regards to their suppliers, what do their suppliers need, and can I be a resource for them?
I'll add one thing, Liz, and it's in regards to a national conference, because while you are not necessarily there to meet with suppliers, we weren't when Christy and I went last year, but the benefit was one, going to the RPO event, so the Regional Partner Organization event on that first day, because we met a bunch of people there who were in the same RPO as we are. So WBEC West, you also get to mingle with other people from other RPOs, figure out who's doing what, and you get to spend a little bit of social time. But also we made a lot of connections during lunches, because lunches is literally one big hall with big tables that sit either 8 or 12, and you get to sit next to people who you don't know, and you make a lot of connections there. And then I would say from an education standpoint, they had some pretty powerful sessions at the last national conference. And again, like if you are the seatmates, and those are like 200 to 300 people in each session, maybe I'm exaggerating, maybe 150 at each session at the same time, and there are like 8 to 12 sessions going on, and then you just flip-flop your session, so you have to register to go there because they get pretty filled up really quickly, especially the most exciting ones. And you get to make a lot of connections there. And then I think that there are a lot of small businesses that exhibit on the show floor. There is dedicated time during the show floor where you get to go and visit with businesses. You make a lot of connections there too, just talking through. So you may not score an Apple or a Google or whatever, but there may be a business that is trying to go to market, and so their way to exhibit, or their way to connect, is to exhibit on the show floor, and then you get to make connections like that.
Yeah.
From a national conference benefit. And I'm pretty sure that NMSDC, NGLCC, and WBNC are very similar.
It's all very similar setups.
Yeah.
I think the biggest difference is matchmaking. Matchmaking is when the corporation says, this is what we're looking for. You apply in advance, or register rather in advance, and the corporations are saying, your Apples or your Googles are saying, we want to meet with Becky, Melissa, Christy, and then so you at least like have a reason to meet in advance. But one of the things I would say about that is that oftentimes somebody else said we need to meet with this person. And so the person you're actually meeting with doesn't really know like why you're meeting. So that can be, it all depends. It really all comes down to the person that you're meeting with at that company, what their vision is, and how much you can connect the dots from their strategy to what you do. So I think sometimes there's a really natural fit and sometimes not, but either way, there's tons of opportunities to connect. But you can also, Well, I would say, yes, try more than one. You can't go to everything. It's too hard.
Liz, can you talk about B Corp for a little bit? Because one of
Yeah.
the things that Christy and I were impressed is also B Corp is interrelated to a lot of other organizations like We the Change and, and also B Labs on the regional kind of B Lab organizations. That's the one you said had a community around it
Yep.
where people who do good can connect with other people who do good. So what's the expectations? What is the expectation behind B Corp that would make sense for some of the people here to look into?
Yeah. So, so B Corp certification, what they are certifying is that you have met their baseline criteria based on the size of your company. So you will not be evaluated like the Ben and Jerry's and the Patagonias of the world. You will be evaluated as a small, a micro, small, or medium-sized business. And they're looking for a base level of impact across 6 categories. So human rights, climate, advocacy, social justice, your governance, making sure that you can say you're doing it, but you also have documents. So they're going to look at your impact, and that's what they are certifying you against, are goals based on the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Are you meeting these criteria? Um, so it's a lot, the process is a lot more rigorous than any of the other certifications, which are rigorous in themselves. So if you went through the WeBank certification and were like, I'm never doing that again, take a hard look at B Corp because it is much more rigorous and there's like an actual audit process. Even if you say like I do business with mostly you know, small and local businesses, they're going to be like, which ones, who are they, how do you know they're small, that kind of thing. So that's like where B Corp starts. But then, so you're certified by most people here, B Lab in the USA and Canada. They have a global network. So they have Sistema B in Latin America. They have B Corp UK. They have Europe. So it is global. And then each of their, as Aggie was talking about, there's little communities within those larger groups that you can join to find people who are aligned with you. We the Change is the women's affiliate, the women-owned affiliate of B Corp. So it's purpose-driven women-owned businesses. Not everybody is actually B Corp certified or not certified yet. We have a lot of Be Curious companies. And again, it's a way to sort of like get into this large global network and start to learn, is this a place for you? Are they values aligned? There's also an organization for an affinity group for people of color. There's one for the beauty and cosmetics industry. There's one for marketing. So, and then there's also ones that are separated by geography. So my B local, as it's called, is B local mid-Atlantic. So that covers like, you know, basically the middle Atlantic. Yeah, right. Lower than New York, higher than Georgia. Um, and so depending on how I'm very involved with We the Change, uh, the Women's Network, because I feel that there's a way to connect like the WeBank community and B Corp in a way that would benefit everybody. But then I also have the opportunities to attend B local events in my like closer to me. Because We the Change is primarily virtual and a national organization. So then I have also people local to me that we can work with. B Corp is having their champions retreat. They have a biannual champions retreat, so they won't have one next year, and that's going to be in Milwaukee in a few weeks. And so that, there are opportunities to meet in person, but I would say primarily because it's so big, there's a lot of virtual opportunities to connect. And it's not so much about their formal programming, is much more about their standards and how you can keep getting better at your social impact than it is about like let's connect you with the purposes of growing your business. That's really the purview of these smaller affinity organizations, so that you can meet people to develop business.
Any questions, or I can continue because I always have
I
tons.
know you have a bunch of questions.
One of the things that is scares people away from B Corp is the fact that you have to produce an annual report with how it is that you're basically tying into the values of B Corp. And I know that that's something that we've discussed of like, are we there yet? What are we reporting on? How easy it is to create those reports to basically show that we're tying into the values of B Corp, because it's not just you're a woman and the business is 51% your own or 100% your own. So now you're automatically basically getting that certification after you get through the application and the interview process. B Corp is like ongoing. Like it's not just a gender thing or sexual orientation thing or a color of the skin thing. It is literally you are doing good in the world and you have to showcase that.
Yep. And you have to continuously improve.
Right, exactly. So how uh not going to say complicated, but how time consuming usually it is, and is it preventing companies or creating a hurdle for companies to actually become B Corp certified?
That's an awesome question. And I would say anecdotally, yes. Also, the B Corp standards recently changed. So if you've looked at them, like in the past 4 years, they changed about 2 years ago, and they just started. Actually, last year was the first year that they had the new application. So, and with those standards, for many companies, it's become more rigorous. It's also a lot more expensive than like your WBE or MBE certifications. Like where I live, it varies region to region, but you're basically looking at between $500 and $1,000 a year for the certification, the WeBank and MSCC. For B Corp, it's $2,000 a year. And they used to have equity pricing, which meant that like as a women-owned business of a certain size, I get a certain discount. They have done away with that for everyone except for companies owned by people of color, small businesses owned by people of color under a certain revenue. So so it's expensive, and it is time consuming. I mean, I probably started that application 4 years before I ended up getting certified. Now, I wasn't like working on it consistently for 4 years. I'd like do a bunch and then leave it and then come back and have to update. But what finally tipped me over the edge was that some of my clients were asking about it. They were like, they asked me that exact question. I was like, I have no idea. So I went through it. Um, you know, but that said, I do think that, I've definitely been able to connect other women business owners with clients. I've got a new client in the B Corp network probably 3 months after I got certified. And a lot of it was because one, they were looking for business development consulting, so that made sense. That's what I do. But they also, it's the sales cycle is a lot shorter because you've been through this rigorous process and you're aligned. The B locals and the affinity groups like We the Change are there for those companies who are not certified yet. You might be curious, like I'm curious about this, but I'm not ready for the certification. So you can become a part of the community without going through the whole process. I would say the like I do my annual report in a blog format every year. Like that's probably the least of it. It's like, once you have like, okay, these are my areas that I feel like I can really shine. I think it was like collecting that information at the beginning. That's the hardest part. I mean, the renewal will be rigorous because again, I've never taken this one. I got certified in the old one and I'm going to get renewed in the new one. But yeah, I think that it's that initial collecting and just the level of detail, keeping track of your carbon emissions and stuff like that.
So for people who are certification curious,
Yes.
what do you recommend? Like you said WBNC, which applies to everybody in this
Mhm.
in this room, and also from an expectation of starting and completing the certification process. What are we looking at in terms of time and effort?
So I think, yeah, for WBE, MBE, I would say probably most of you could do, like, if you set aside a Friday, you're going to get probably 95% of the way through it. You have to get a couple things notarized and stuff like that. So who knows if you can do it in that day, but you can probably do it. I would say you have it on your list and it takes you more than 2 weeks of like consistent effort to get through it, then you might want to like call in some help or determine if now is really the time, because after the application, you need the time, energy, and resources to work it, to go to these events, to go to your event, to do the networking. So I would say most people can probably get it done. It is just paperwork, um, addresses, your bank forms, your tax returns, that kind of thing. But it's not like you shouldn't have to contact too many people within your organization to get it done.
Or you can call Liz or us.
Yep.
We'll walk you through it.
Yeah, absolutely. It can definitely get you unstuck.
Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah. Great.
Any questions? Anything that we didn't tackle that you are curious about?
Yes.
Be curious, WB curious, NGLCC curious, and MSDC curious, Veteran Zone curious, Up Zone curious.
Yeah.
No, this was
I-
great. Thank you.
Good. I put my email in the chat and you can definitely send everyone my email address if you come up with something later. What I find is people like, they're like, okay, cool, I'm motivated. And they start it and then they get stuck. And then they're like, this has been on my list for 2 months. I'm like, let's get you unstuck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that if you want to participate in some of the events that are organized by those organizations that are not We the Change, that allows people that are non-certified to go and attend. I know WeBank, there are some events that allow businesses that are not yet Weebies to attend, but most of them and the ones that matter are you have to be certified to attend. Just like at the WBNC conference, if you're not certified, there are some sessions like the matchmaking that Liz mentioned that you cannot attend. And there are sessions that are specific to WB. I learned that the hard way at the Denver conference 2 years ago when they had an entire corridor reserved to just WBs, and they had like bouncers at the entrance, preventing people from attending.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you have any questions, like which events should I go to specifically, like happy to have an individual conversation and talk people through that.
Cool. Liz, one more question about that. Like people who are certified in the WBEC RPO, can we all attend other RPO events?
Yes. Typically you can, unless there's some sort of restriction. There is usually not. So you could go to WeBEC East, you could go to WeBEC Pacific. There might be a different price point, but usually at this point, as long as you're certified, there's not an issue.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge with us. This was super helpful. And I know that for people who didn't get to attend, but send me frantic messages about this, will this be recorded? We'll be sharing all of that with everybody, along with a wrap up, along with a write-up.
Great. Thank you so much.
Cool.
Thanks for the opportunity. And
Yeah, of course.
yeah, look forward to seeing you all soon at one of these events.
Sounds great.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful Tuesday, and we'll see you on the next one on, Christy, help me out here, May 10th. It's the second Tuesday, no, first Tuesday, second Tuesday of every month. I don't even know what
It is
I do
May
for a living.
12th.
May 12th. There we go. May 12th is our next one. So we will see you on the next Skill Lab. And thank you for for hanging out.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye.